This week on Motor Week, Richard Hammond compares a couple of hot hatches with one important difference. One of them is a diesel. Chris Goffey looks at Rover's new mid-size saloon, the 45, at its launch in Shrewsbury. And I'll be looking at Daewoo's tiny off-roader, the Korando, as well as that famous Daewoo package that goes along with it. But first, Ginny Buckley feels the power in BMW's serious saloon, the M5.
A B, an M and a W. 3 letters that together sum up the quality and performance you expect from the pride of Bavaria. But if you're a real BMW fan, there's one other letter that you hanker after. A letter that means true driving excitement. I'm talking, of course, about the letter M. It stands for BMW's motorsport division. Now, this doesn't just look after BMW's racing interests at events like Le Mans. Instead, it tweaks and tunes standard BMWs, turning them into supercars and giving us the chance to experience what life on the track is really like. This is the 3rd generation M5, a car that combines the elegance and comfort you expect from a first-class executive saloon with sports car performance. Park this up in the executive car park and you really know you've arrived. The only problem is, you wouldn't get much work done. You'll be far too busy showing everyone your engine. From the outside, a quick glance at those 4 stainless steel exhaust pipes sticking out of the back gives you a clue about what to expect. Add to that the graceful, muscular lines of the car, the deep front spoiler and a lovely set of alloys. Altogether, it's a very impressive picture. Inside you find sports seats that move electrically in every conceivable direction, guaranteeing you hours of driving comfort, no matter what your size, which is very important in a car that is as much fun to drive as this one. In the interior, well, there's more leather in here than you'll find in many a farmer's field. And on this top-of-the-range model, you get a choice of 2 trims. You can have traditional walnut or very sporty stainless steel. Of course, there are all the gadgets and gizmos that you expect with a car in this class. Everything moves electronically, even the steering wheel. There's dual air conditioning and, of course, good old cup holders. Where would we be without them? There's also a list of optional extras that's as long as your arm and includes things like the what would we do without satellite navigation system. But enough of all that frippery, because this car is really about the thing that's under the bonnet, the engine, and there is a fantastic V8 waiting under there. This is the first M5 not to use a straight 6. Instead, there's a 5-litre V8 producing 400 brake horsepower. The top speed is limited to 155 miles per hour, and 0 to 60 takes just over 5 seconds thanks to the incredible torque that runs through the 6-speed gearbox. Being in control of this car is amazing. The power feels unbelievable, and it's incredibly constant thanks to something called the double Vanos. No, it's nothing to do with Star Wars. It's actually BMW's patented camshaft management system. And this makes sure that the torque is evenly balanced right throughout the engine's rev range. And if you feel the need for a surge of power, then there's a lovely little button that you press to give you a more rapid response and tighten up the steering. When you're cruising along in 6th gear, it strikes you just how quiet and refined the M5 really is. You get a comfortable, relaxing drive all the way. Get it out onto some open country roads and you see a very different side to its character. When you add together the stiffer suspension, the tighter steering and that massive V8, you really do get incredible levels of response and handling that are even more amazing when you remind yourself that you're actually behind the wheel of a large, executive, fat cat saloon. Now, BMW are well aware that this could very easily become an extremely dangerous piece of machinery, and so safety features strongly on the M5. There are no less than 8 airbags, and it features things like crumple zones to front and rear and, of course, ABS. And all new drivers are encouraged to enrol at the M Institute at Brands Hatch for a spot of driver training. Now, the M5 has everything that you expect from BMW and then some. It's a superb blend of luxury, of style, and of course, performance. In fact, the only problem, apart from the price, that I can see about owning an M5 is the fact that you would miss an awful lot of appointments because you simply couldn't bear to drag yourself out of the car. I can't resist.
The humble diesel has come a long way in recent years. In fact, nowadays it's so sophisticated we even find it under the bonnet of hot hatches, like this one, the Audi A3 TDI. Despite its rather striking hot hatch looks, under there lurks a diesel. But is it enough to entice drivers of traditional hot hatches? And to find out, we've pitched it against this, possibly the king of the modern day hot hatch. It's the Peugeot 306 GTI 6. This Peugeot betrays its performance hatch roots immediately. Straight away it feels light, nimble, agile and very fast. You do need all 6 gears on offer though to take advantage of the power delivery, which is very peaky to say the least. We're talking narrow power band here. And to scrub that speed off, the brakes are excellent, very efficient, though perhaps not as much feel as there could be when it comes to stopping in a bit of a hurry. The interior is definitely racy with plenty of shiny bits, and it does surround you nicely, but it does perhaps feel a little on the flimsy side. That the driving position is great, you really do feel in control of this thing. Above all, it really does feel like a very, very hot hatch. Okay, so it is an awful lot of fun, but then it is a hot hatch, possibly the hottest, so that's precisely what we'd expect of it. The big question is, what are we going to get out of our diesel friend here? Come on, my old bus, let's see what you got. The Audi's diesel engine makes itself felt immediately upon pulling away, mostly because the power comes in straight away from as low as 1500 RPM, with peak power coming in at probably about 4000 RPM, but it'll rev right through to 4.5 or even close to 5, which does give the impression of a much bigger rev range. But this is a different kind of speed. Whereas the Peugeot is fast and frantic, the Audi is about making swift, comfortable and easy progress. It's a much more relaxing car to drive fast. Take the time to look around and soak up that cabin ambiance, and there's no doubting the roots of this car. It feels very, very well put together inside and out. You could be in a car several sizes larger. Whether you're a diesel nut or not, that is a great game. It's a lot of fun. Where would any self-respecting hot hatch be without those all-important figures? So here they are. For the Peugeot 306 GTI 6, you'll pay around £19,000. It'll scamper from 0 to 60 in less than 8 seconds and onto a top speed of 130 miles an hour. There is a price to pay, though, in poor miles per gallon performance. In depreciation, 3 years after you've bought it, it'll hold on to 42% of its value, and don't expect your insurance to be cheap. And so to the Audi A3 TDI SE, it'll cost a shade over £20,000 and take 10 seconds to get from 0 to 60, running out of puff at 120 miles an hour. Great MPG though, up to 54 miles from every gallon. And good news in depreciation. 3 years after you've bought it, it'll still be worth 58% of what you paid. And in the meantime, your insurance will have cost you a lot less than the Peugeot. There's no denying it. The Peugeot 306 GTI 6 is the better drive. It's still the king of the hot hatches. But with Gatsos springing up everywhere, when can you really exploit all of that power anyway? What we're looking for here is fun, which the Audi A3 delivers in huge quantities. And it may sound an odd thing to say about an Audi over a Peugeot, but the A3 will in fact be the cheaper car to run over a longer term. All of which means if you're in the market for a hot hatch like this, then something like this must be a realistic value for money alternative.
Still to come after the break, Chris Goffey looks at one of the cars that BMW hope will save Rover. And I'll be looking at the Daewoo Korando.
Ever since the days when the then British Leyland started an initially half-hearted association with Honda to produce the Triumph Acclaim in the late 70s, there's been a strong Japanese influence on their mid-range cars. Now, despite the purchase of Rover by BMW in the severing of ties between Honda and Rover, there's still a very strong Oriental influence on this, the new Rover 45. Now it's billed as a new car to fit in between the 25 and the top of the range 75, but in fact it's just a facelift of the old 400 series model. That came out in 1995. It was a joint association between Honda and Rover. Honda built their car in Swindon and called it the Civic. Rover built theirs in Longbridge and called it the 420 and the 416. So what's new? Well, obviously a new smiley face, new headlamps, a new grille to reflect Rover 75 style, new bumpers and chrome trim and new wheels. Under the bonnet, 5 engine options, 3 of them new to this car. At the top end there's a new 2-litre V6 taken from the 75 model range. There's the 1.8 K series, a well-proven engine, and a new L series 2-litre turbo diesel. The 1.4 and the 1.6 engines are carried over from the old car. Suspension's been stiffened up to take the weight of the V6, and Rover claim ride and handling has improved as a result. Transmissions include a 5-speed manual, a 6-speed CVT and a 5-speed Steptronic automatic for the V6, again derived from the 75. The trouble with the old car was that Rover pitched it too high in the marketplace. They targeted and priced it well above the Escorts and Astras that it should have been competing against. And as a result, it looked expensive and not enough people bought it. Now with the new range of 75, 45 and 25, well, they've confronted reality. The 25 is pitched hard up against the sort of Polo Fiesta competition it should be facing, and this car is going to be priced hard against the Focus and Astra. So what everybody wants to know, what's it like to drive? Well, we can't tell you because Rover's put an embargo on the driving impressions until the car's formal launch in January. And we're going to stick by that embargo because we're gentlemen. But on the quiet, it's quite good. As anyone who watches the registrations will know, this plan had better work. So far in 1999, Rover haven't got one car in the top 10, and this from the company who in the 1100, 1300 days used to take 30% of the market with one model. Sales this year are 30% down on the equivalent period in 1998. If this rebadging exercise doesn't work, BMW are going to be deeply displeased.
If you want to join the hunting, shooting and fishing set and get yourself a nice 4x4 off-roader, the least money you can spend to do it is right here. It's made in Korea and it's the Daewoo Korando. It even has a Mercedes engine. Well, kind of. An engine designed by Mercedes and built under license in Korea. And for around £17,000, this is as cheap as it gets. But 3 questions come to mind. The obvious one, is it any good? We'll find out in just a moment. The second one, what about that novel way of selling cars that Daewoo have developed and introduced into this country? And thirdly, is the package good value? We'll see. Now, as far as the interior is concerned, it's a pretty pleasant place to be. The seats are firm but comfortable, well upholstered. There's even lumbar adjustment on the driver's seat. And remember, this is not an expensive car. The dashboard instruments are clear and easy to use. The in-car entertainment is good. The air conditioning certainly works very effectively, and believe it or not, that comes as standard too, unusual in a vehicle of this class. And the only thing that I think I would really pick fault with is the walnut trim, a big lump of walnut in the middle of the dashboard, which, as far as I'm concerned, just jars with what the car is really trying to achieve and where it's trying to position itself. Now, this diesel engine is a 2.9 litre 5-cylinder turbo, and it's a willing enough lugger. Oddly enough, the one thing it doesn't have is very low down torque, unusually for a diesel, but when you get the thing running and you get the turbo up on song, it actually delivers quite a lot of power. Now, the 0 to 60 speeds, well, please don't even ask, but certainly around towns, let's say 0 to 40, it's more than acceptable performance, and you're not going to be embarrassed pulling away from the traffic lights. The gearbox, on the other hand, is a bit of a mess. It's one of the worst gear changes possibly that I've ever had the displeasure to use, and I really wish they'd do a bit of work on that. Let's talk about ride and handling. At motorway speeds, this is absolutely wonderful. It's very quiet, it's very smooth. However, when you get it onto the back roads like these, it does tend to get a little bit untidy, but then it is a big, heavy 4x4 vehicle, so that's not entirely surprising. The ride, to say the least, is choppy, and it's probably a little bit too wallowy on the corners, but again, you're always looking for that compromise between ride and handling, and that's most noticeable, I guess, in a vehicle that does have significant off-road capabilities like this one. Now, Daewoo's, remember, are not sold through the normal network of dealerships. They actually have their own company-owned places, which, for want of a better term, we'll call a Daewoo shop. Here's the nearest one. Let's go in and check out the package. So where Daewoo decided to do things differently was that they said, instead of having a network of independent dealers, we will simply have a chain of our own showrooms, staffed by our own people who are on salary, not on commission, and that way there'll be less pressure on the car buying public. That's the theory. But on the other hand, don't come into one of these places expecting to do a 10% discount deal, because you won't get it. The price that you see is the price that you'll pay. And whether it works or not, well, they've sold 100,000 cars in the UK that way so far. So when you've paid over your money and you've got the key and the vehicle, it doesn't all end there, because there's a 3-year, 60,000-mile warranty, 3 years of 60,000 miles free servicing with a courtesy car and delivery and collection. It goes on. 6-year anti-corrosion warranty, 3 years of AA total cover. What more do you want? That means that in 3 years you're not going to spend a dime on this car, apart from putting petrol in the tank, or in this case, diesel. So now I know more about the package that's on offer with this car, it begins to make more and more sense. I really do quite like it. In fact, I think I like any manufacturer who's got the confidence to say, yes, we'll warranty it and we'll service it free for 60,000 miles and 3 years. That really does begin to look like a manufacturer who says, yeah, we make a good product, we're confident with it. And confidence is something that comes across as you drive it as well, with this elevated, lofty driving position, looking down on lesser mortals in their ordinary cars. Now, who's likely to buy a car like this? Given the value for money, which includes that remarkable aftercare package, who knows, maybe a farmer looking for a workhorse. It'll certainly do that because it'll plug mud with the best of them. But it's also perhaps different enough and chic enough for somebody looking for a 4x4, but who doesn't like the £20,000 plus price tag of the more traditional vehicle.
The term world platform is nothing new. Ford, GM and others have been pursuing this ideal for some years. The problem has always been that people in, say, Europe will have totally different requirements to those, say, in the United States. With the new Accord, Honda designers around the globe had to contend with 3 conflicting requirements from their main markets. For the Japanese Asian market, they needed a long, narrow car, better able to cope with the busy streets of Tokyo. For the US, well, they wanted longer and wider, of course. For Europe, they needed a car slightly shorter and wider than needed for the other markets. Well, the answer was to create a platform design on computer with subframes common to all Accords, but with the flexibility to be adjusted to suit the local markets. These subframes carry all the locating points for the suspension, as well as form a significant part of the car's structure and crash protection elements. The chassis dimensions between these subframes can vary without adding substantially to the development costs. This flexibility was gained by altering the mounting points for the subframes. Globally, this reduces the cost locally to the design centres in Japan, USA and Europe, while still providing the vehicles needed in each market. For example, in Japan only, there's a four-wheel drive Accord. Previously, this model needed its own individual rear suspension, an expensive undertaking. With the new system, this wasn't necessary. To look at the Accords from all these markets side by side, you wouldn't think that they were the same model at all. Only the Honda family styling cues really hint at their common heritage.
Coming up on next week's show, Ken Gibson is one of the first to get behind the wheel of Citroën's Picasso, and Richard Hammond gets to grips with 4 Cadillacs in France. All that next week on Motor Week.